What if I told you that the wars we've fought, the battles we've endured, and the lives we've lost might not have been as noble as we've been told? What if they were more about power, profit, and personal gain than about the greater good? From ancient empires to modern conflicts, the story remains eerily the same. War is often not about protecting the people. It's about consolidating power, enriching a few, and securing control over resources. What if, behind every war, there was a hidden agenda, an agenda driven by those in power for their own benefit, rather than the benefit of their nations or people? Today, we'll uncover the psychology behind how political leaders manipulate entire populations into war, using fear, nationalism, and propaganda to get what they want, whether that's power, resources, or personal legacy. So what's the real story behind war? And how have world leaders used conflict not to defend their people, but to further their own selfish agendas? Let's go back in time and look at a war that has shaped the world in unimaginable ways. World War II. It's a war we've been taught was fought to stop the rise of fascism, to defend the world from a tyrant named Adolf Hitler. But the truth is, the reasons behind the war were far more complex and deeply tied to the personal ambitions of those in power. Adolf Hitler's rise to power wasn't about saving Germany. It wasn't even really about defending the country. No, Hitler's war was about something far more personal, a ruthless desire for global domination. Hitler's vision for the world was to create a fascist empire, built on the backs of those he deemed worthy, the Aryan race. The propaganda machine he crafted told the German people they were fighting for survival. But the reality was that Hitler was using war as a means of securing power, influence, and an empire. Hitler used the psychology of fear to manipulate the German public. He made them believe that they were under constant threat from external enemies, Jews, communists, anyone who didn't fit into his ideal vision. By playing on these fears, he justified his aggressive expansionism and convinced the people that they needed to fight. But Hitler wasn't the only one playing the game of war for personal gain. When we look at the Allies, particularly Britain, it's easy to see how leaders like Winston Churchill used the fear of Nazi invasion to unite the public and maintain power. Churchill, a war leader celebrated for his never-surrender attitude, was deeply aware of the political power that comes with leading a nation in war. The fear of German dominance united Britain, and for Churchill, this was a chance to solidify his legacy as the protector of the British people. But let's not forget, the war was about more than just stopping fascism. It was about reasserting British power in a rapidly changing world. Fast forward a few decades and we find ourselves in Vietnam. The Vietnam War, like so many others, was sold to the public as a fight against communism. But look a little deeper, and you'll see that the motives were far more complicated. President Lyndon B. Johnson, for example, pushed the narrative of the domino theory, the idea that if one country fell to communism, others would follow. He convinced the American public that the very survival of democracy was at stake. But behind the scenes, we see how economic and political interests were just as important as any ideological battle. The military-industrial complex in the U.S. had grown immensely since World War II. American military contractors and arms manufacturers were profiting from the war. For Johnson and his administration, this was about securing economic power and keeping America at the center of global influence. The war wasn't just about ideology, it was also about maintaining economic control over a rapidly changing world. So it wasn't just about stopping the spread of communism. It was about securing resources, maintaining dominance, and positioning America to control vast parts of Southeast Asia. Now that we understand the deep motivations behind these wars, let's explore how war benefits political leaders beyond just power. Take Margaret Thatcher's use of the Falklands War in 1982. The UK was facing serious internal crises, economic hardship, growing public discontent, and an unstable political climate. But what did Thatcher do? She turned to war to distract the public. The Falklands, an isolated British territory in the South Atlantic, was hardly a critical part of Britain's security. But Thatcher spun the conflict as an issue of national pride. The Argentinians have invaded British soil. The public rallied behind her, forgetting their economic frustrations, and she used the war to bolster her image as a strong leader. The war was short, the victory was celebrated, and Thatcher's approval ratings soared. It didn't matter that the war itself wasn't about national security. It was about Thatcher securing her position, using the conflict to shift public opinion and secure her legacy. And it wasn't just political gain. War is a way for leaders to maintain and grow economic influence. When conflicts erupt, military contractors, defense companies, and even tech companies make billions. Take the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, for example. The Bush administration sold the war as a mission to rid Iraq of weapons of mass destruction and to liberate the Iraqi people. But behind the rhetoric was a far more complex reality. American corporations, particularly those involved in defense contracting, stood to gain massively from the conflict. Billions of dollars were spent rebuilding Iraq after it was bombed into oblivion. The military-industrial complex grew stronger, and private companies profited immensely. Lyndon Johnson used the fear of communism to rally the public. He pushed the idea that if Vietnam fell to communism, it would spark a chain reaction that would engulf the entire region. The message was simple. The survival of freedom was at stake, and Americans had to fight for it. And today, the media plays a huge role in shaping our perception of war. The 2003 Iraq War is a perfect example. The Bush administration used the media to push a narrative of imminent threat from Saddam Hussein. The media, in turn, ran with it, creating a sense of urgency and fear among the public. Through the media and public speeches, war is sold as a righteous cause, and the public buys it. They're told that the enemy is evil, that the war is just, and that they must rally behind it. It's a masterful psychological manipulation. But in reality, it's about maintaining control, and often about boosting political power and wealth. But there's a devastating cost to war, one that goes beyond the political gain, the economic profit, and the manipulation of the masses. The real cost of war is paid by those who are sent to fight. It's paid by the soldiers who return home with physical wounds, psychological scars, and broken spirits. It's paid by the families who lose loved ones and by the civilians who are caught in the crossfire. The leaders who push for these wars rarely experience the suffering that they inflict on others. They never feel the pain of losing a loved one or the devastation of losing a home. The people who benefit most from war, whether economically or politically, are the ones who are least affected by its consequences. So the next time you hear a leader call for war, ask yourself, who really benefits from this? Who stands to gain the most from the suffering of others? And why is it always the people, the soldiers, the civilians, who lose? War is a tool used by the powerful to solidify their control, expand their wealth, and secure their legacies. It's not about freedom or justice or defending the people. It's about control, resources, and power. And until we start asking the hard questions, until we hold our leaders accountable, war will remain just another instrument of personal gain. If this video made you think, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of power and the hidden forces shaping our world.